Good morning, folks in Central Virginia. I can scarcely believe that this needs to be stated again. Many times, ever since the very first out-migration, which was encouraged by someone else, and I'd have to say it was probably Charles Kleinhaus, but that went very well for him. But there are a few people in America, Americans and South Africans, encouraging South Africans to out-migrate once they arrive in America. I have discouraged that practice from the very beginning. Why? Because people are out migrating after 2, 3, 4 days or a week. They don't have social security numbers. They don't have an employment authorization document. They do not have any idea where they're going, what they're doing, what they're up to. They don't understand the system. They have not even begun to grasp the situation they're in. Out-migration is a fool's errand, except in rare cases. The interesting thing here is that of the 2,000 plus South Africans that I've been in contact with over the process that's taken place so far this past year, I've never encouraged anyone to out-migrate, and I've discouraged it for the very reasons I've just stated. You are not a person without a social security number, and you can't work. Some employers will not let you work without an EAD. So you must secure those things before you start moving around the country. Also, a word of caution to these refugees. I'm pretty certain that some of them have failed to report their move to USCIS. Ladies and gentlemen, it should be clear to you when you're briefed by our government that if you're a refugee, you must legally report any physical change of address, even if it's just across the street, to USCIS within 10 days. If you haven't done that, you risk losing your refugee status. That's not fear. It's not clickbait. It's a statement of fact. Some people can't seem to understand that. So make sure you're reporting any change, any movement when you go from one place to another. So again, I discourage out-migration, and I've always discouraged it. However, today, one young man who's been abysmally treated by a disgusting refugee agency in Erie, Pennsylvania, one that has now committed slander and defamation of character, and also have screenshots about one of their employees making racist statements about South Africans, yet these people are given a contract to handle refugees. This explains an awful lot about the conduct of MCRC in Erie, Pennsylvania, an organization that soon may find itself in very deep trouble with ORR and maybe even off with attorneys for their conduct. But now it explains a lot. So this gentleman will be moving to Cleveland, Ohio today after being ignored, disrespected, maltreated, lied to, and intimidated by MCRC. So with the exception of that, of the 2,000 now, I say about 2,300 refugees that I've been in contact with, I've never encouraged out-migration. In fact, in this case, I didn't encourage it. I just made the young man aware of opportunities if he wants to take advantage of it. And it's his decision. I had no role in his decision. So it is the height of hypocrisy to hear these dirty, crooked refugee agencies intimidating, threatening people, and telling lies. But again, folks, out-migration is a problem. Here's another reason it's a problem. We have people with good hearts that work in some agencies around the country that will assist people who've out-migrated, but understand that unless your case is transferred to them, they do not receive funding. Now, I know all of you refugees are hearing there's no funding. Well, they're liars. Agencies get funding from the government under a contract to perform services. They perform the services for up to 5 years for refugees. So they're getting paid for every case they have. The amount they get paid depends on what's happening. But the bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen, is they're lying when they tell you there's no money. Your money has not changed. The $2,450 federal grant per person has not changed. Now, those agencies are legally allowed to hold $450 of every case if they desire to use it on your behalf or to use it for other purposes related to the refugee program. But they do get paid. I mean, does anybody in their right mind think that these agencies just sit around and the only money they come across is the grant money that's for refugees? No, they're making money. And there's nothing wrong with them making money providing a service. But for them to lie to you and say they have no money is BS. When they no longer have a case, they no longer receive funding. When you out-migrate, they lose the case. It's simple math. So discouraging people from out-migrating because they're not making money, I get it. But when you go to another agency that doesn't pick up your case, it hasn't been transferred, you're allowed to transfer, but that's up to both agencies to do it. They have to agree. But some people just leave their agency, like this crappy one in Maryland that people are dealing with, and go elsewhere, like to Pennsylvania. And they go to other agencies, and the other agency has no obligation whatsoever to help you. They have no obligation to help you. They're not being paid to help you. If they help you, it's out of the goodness of their heart. Keep that in mind. But the original agency no one gets any money, so they have reason to discourage it. But back to the out-migration. When you go to an agency that's not getting funding to help your case, You put them in a bind. They have people that they're already responsible for, cases they're responsible for, and they're using their resources to help you. So you create a problem for someone else. And this video is because it happened again twice in the last day where this has happened, where someone has done this and now they've put people in a bind. People are trying to help, people who are genuine. You need to think very hard about this concept of out-migration. Unless you're independently wealthy, you are creating problems for other people. And quite frankly, in most cases I've observed, it's selfish behavior. If you're unhappy with your refugee agency, I understand that. But get your Social Security number, get your EID before you start making these silly moves. And they are silly moves when you create more problems for everyone else. And a lot of hard-headed, stubborn South African refugees have been doing just that. So, is this going to hurt people's feelings? Too bad. That's the reality. People don't understand what they're doing when they out-migrate. I understand the desperation. I understand. Look, if you got a job opportunity somewhere else, you've been offered a job in San Diego and you're in Missouri, then you're going to take it. That makes sense. But if you're just moving because you're unhappy, because you're not getting the care and feeding you think you're entitled to or deserve, well, that's not a reasonable reason to out-migrate. Get your documents in order, make sure you're straight, make sure everything's taken care of before you pick up stakes. You're free to move wherever you want in America. I'm not discouraging that. You want to move? Go ahead. You're free. You have all the rights of an American citizen, except you're not allowed to vote because you're not a citizen. Short of that, you have all the same rights as every other American citizen. So do what you like. But understand, when you're trying to figure out how to get a Social Security appointment because you don't have one, that's on you. When you're trying to figure out, how to get your check from your previous agency that you left because you can't reach them, that's on you. That's not someone else's problem. That's a problem you've created. And if you want help, people will help you. But not when you're arrogant, disrespectful, and rude. Like the phone call I got yesterday. Cheers.